The next feature of our program is our reactions from two administrators of the university. For the first reactor, may I call on Professor Dr. Paolo A. Bolaños to deliver his piece entitled Philosophy in Liquid Outcomes.
I'd first like to thank Dr. William Spady for sharing with us his very informative lecture. Um, I'll try to make my presentation brief. Although I have a I prepared a five-page presentation, but these pages are more of the thoughts that I gathered as I dialogue with Dr. Spady, but even before that. So the ideas that I'm going to share with you today are more or less ideas that came after that viral varsitarian. Actually, even before that viral varsitarian article came out. So the alternative title to my presentation, this short presentation is, of course, the original title is Philosophy and Liquid Outcomes, so that will come later. It's not as important as the secondary title, which is the context of my critique of OBE implementation. Because since that viral varsitarian article, I sort of, I call this, I now have a reputation for the critique of or the anti-OBE, the reputation of anti-OBE in the university. So, but I'd first like to declare a disclaimer. I actually did not present a paper on OBE during the research forum, as reported by the Varsitarian. My research paper was on the ethics of thinking, using the ideas from the German philosophers Friedrich Nietzsche and Theodor Adorno. I'm not going to discuss that today. While I was speaking, and since the paper is somewhat related to education, I merely used the implementation of OBE in the Philippines as an example of the system's seeming incompatibility with the humanities, specifically philosophy. In philosophy, we are concerned more about the process of learning than direct and fixed outcomes. That's why the phrase obsession with outcomes came out in that Varsitarian article. But today I'll try to contextualize what I meant by our fixation or obsession with outcomes. We are worried that the specificity of an outcome would rob students of depth and broadness. But you know, what I mean here by specificity is not what Dr. Spady presented earlier. What I meant by specificity is our fixation with outcomes, you know, the rigid outcomes that we lay down in our syllabi. I also mentioned that our obsession with the OBE format is probably different from the true nature of OBE philosophy. Unfortunately, the Varsitarian article dubbed it as a research paper criticizing OBE. But I still thank the Varsitarian because of that viral article, we now have Dr. Spady with us this afternoon. As I see it, the problem is in the way we are implementing the system. As we are more focused on the format of the syllabus, and I think all of you can attest to that, we are more concerned about the format of the syllabus than the real philosophy behind OBE, which I believe is beyond which items or sections or taxonomy used in the syllabus. OBE as implemented in the Philippines today in the body of CMO 46 series of 2012. And hopefully all of you have read the CMO. And I'm going to tell you why you should read the CMO later. So OBE as it is implemented in the Philippines today is reduced to the structure or appearance of the syllabus. Another spacious practice is the standardization of the format of syllabi, and at the end we are only satisfying accreditors and assessors who are looking for the familiar, measurable, predictable syllabus format. Accreditors or assessors shun away from things such as irony, contingency, and creativity, which to my mind are the real elements of true learning. At least that's what we believe in the philosophy department. Since there are what accreditors and assessors strictly look for in a syllabi, a system that is supposed to make teaching and learning more fun and productive, that is OBE, real OBE, we must now preface our use of OBE with real OBE. A system that's supposed to make teaching and learning more fun and productive can potentially turn into a new form of hegemony. I have to make it clear, though, that I am speaking only on behalf of the humanities. In the actual email interview that I had with the varsitarian, I suggested partial implementation as opposed to wholesale implementation. I'll try to discuss that also. Now, I do not claim to be an expert in OBE. My exposure to the system is based on numerous mandatory seminars and workshops, the application of OBE in my field philosophy, and my little reading, or the reading I have done, the little reading I have done due to my curiosity about OBE implementation. So I'm thankful for the generosity of the father of OBE, because now, even if I am not an expert at OBE, we have the father of OBE with us. Now, perhaps all right. So now I'll try to contextualize the varsitarian interview that I had. These are the questions asked by the varsitarian. Are there any specific areas in OBE that you find problematic? And secondly, what are the changes or improvements that you would recommend to address these areas? And this is how I responded. The funny thing is that the varsitarian article only quoted 2 sentences from my long email. So I'm going to read to you my email. Number 1, this is my response to the first question. Like any other systems, OBE has its benefits and limitations. The OBE system is beneficial to specific programs such as engineering, the natural sciences, and so on, that give premium to measurable outcomes, or more specifically, measurable skills, than to programs, especially in the humanities like philosophy, literature, and religion, and also history. These latter programs give more importance to the critical appreciation of the only word I can think of here is content, but it's more than content. For instance, well, I would rather use the word tradition instead of content. Critical appreciation of culture, critical appreciation of tradition. For instance, one text in philosophy may yield several critical appreciations or receptions. It is not unusual for a philosophy professor to encourage a student to provide a criticism of an idea. As a matter of fact, that is precisely the goal. That is, in other words, that is the outcome that we want our students to learn. The development of the independent and critical thinking of the student. In OBE parlance, the development of independent and critical thinking is the outcome of the pedagogical process. One problem in OBE, maybe not real OBE, maybe imitation OBE, however, is that the outcome, which is fixed from the very beginning, this is the part that the varsitarian article quoted. The outcome, which is fixed from the very beginning, is considered as a positive measure of learning, while the process of achieving such outcome is considered secondary to the learning experience. We now know that outcomes are flexible. Outcomes are adaptable. Unfortunately, what is missed is the qualitative character of the outcome. For instance, in philosophy, independent and critical thinking may yield, as I have mentioned, various and contending results that could not be appreciated by quick measurements based on rubrics. To be more specific, if you let your students read, for example, Bertrand Russell's article called Why I Am Not a Christian, it is unlikely that the activity will right away result in the students becoming atheists. It is possible that a debate among the students will ensue, and some of them might defend Russell's argument, while others will totally reject his argument. Despite this, it is still unlikely that the students who defend Russell will end up becoming atheists. As such, then, the activity results in contingency and irony. The outcome, which I will dub as liquid, is the capability of the students to engage in debate. Okay? It's not a hard or solid competency or skill, but it's something that they can bring with them when they graduate. I'll talk more about that. Now, if OBE is simply about the description of outcomes using adjectives from a given taxonomy like Bloom's, then in essence, the OBE syllabus, the real OBE syllabus, should not be that different from previous syllabi. And if this were just the case, then there is nothing in OBE that is worrisome. However, the situation is more complicated as there is a problem in the way it is being implemented here in the Philippines that worries me. And it's probably just me, but I think the reason why you're here is because you're all worried. I am concerned that the obsession with, that is to say, strict implementation of, I also refer to this in another email as Nazi-like implementation of OBE format, not real OBE format, by the way, might result in a misunderstanding of its pure intentions of real OBE, namely learner or student involvement and flexibility. But since what is overly emphasized in the OBE format, Philippine style, is the format itself and not the measure, is the format itself, such obsession results in the deflation of the meaning of learning. What is learned should be predictable and measurable, otherwise it's not learning at all. But there's no space again for contingency and irony, creativity, expansion of opportunity and so on. But these are all what make OBE. How many of you, by the way, have been penalized by your schools for not reformatting your OBE syllabus? How many of you have had their salaries held or withheld? I've heard stories about that. I think it's real. Another reason why OBE worries me, or the implementation of OBE worries me, is its ties with the industry. We live in an age where the original role of the university as a cultural institution has been forgotten and taken over by the mandate of global economy. As a pedagogical tool, then OBE has been adapted not anymore to articulate the ideals of cultural formation, but the articulation in pedagogical language of the needs of the industry. I taught dissertation writing in the graduate school a few years ago. I had a student who was, I hope she's not here, but if she's here, then well and good. She was writing a dissertation on the OBE implementation, CHED OBE implementation, and she was describing the basic structure of a university, and she started with, the university should be structured this way. First, the university should ask the needs of the industry. and therefore should hone skills that the industry needs, and so on. So I asked her, if that is the role of the university, of higher education, of an HEI, I asked her, so what's the difference between an HEI or a university and TESDA? I think she decided not to pursue the dissertation proposal. I don't know. Higher education then and industry are cemented in OBE in the way it is being implemented. Now, I'd like to be more specific. The way CMO 46 was written, it cements industry and this pedagogical philosophy. This is my response to the second question. Apart from the problematic implementation here in the Philippines, we have to also take into consideration the cases in countries where the OBE system was abandoned. Not really abandoned, but questioned, such as Australia and South Africa. Despite my worries, however, I am by no means simply recommending the wholesale abandonment of OBE. But perhaps we could learn from the Australian and South African experiences. In the context of the Philippines, I would recommend the following. A. Consider a partial as opposed to wholesale implementation of OBE. But now I have since revised my view on this. I said this, I said it because I did not fully understand what real OBE was all about. There are disciplines, but we now know that OBE is not about the curriculum. It's not about the structure of your syllabus. It's an approach. Okay? It's a pedagogical approach. It has nothing to do with the format. It has nothing to do with the curriculum, the CMOs that the CHED are imposing on us. There are disciplines that are well at home with the system, and there are disciplines that are only partially compatible, or perhaps not compatible at all, but I would say partially compatible. But I'll have to work on this. This is a work in progress, so I'm sorry for the tentativeness of these words. In other words, a discipline must be given the freedom, but what I mean really is that a discipline must be given the freedom to determine the best pedagogical tool for its own purposes or goals. Now, in the context of accreditation, I would also say that a discipline, a department should be ready to be accredited. But we all know that accreditation is something forced on us, even if we are not ready. We will benefit more from OBE if we avoid being obsessed with its appearance, the syllabus format, and so on. Instead, imbibe its pure intentions. And then the pure intentions of OBE are different from the intentions of the industry. The university, and this is my message to the University of Santo Tomas and to all universities, the university should revisit its traditional role of a cultural institution and decide whether it has indeed abandoned its role and has embraced the role of a diploma mill for the industry. Let's decide now what the university is all about. Aftermath of the Varsitarian article, my conversations with Dr. William Spade. Thanks to the Varsitarian article, the founders of the Spade and Uy Center of Transformation, OPE, Dr. William Spade and Dr. Francis Uy, took notice of my views on OPE. My initial correspondence with them was through an email message sent by Dr. Uy on the 25th of February 2018 when we were having a tour in Taiwan rather. This was followed finally with an email from Dr. Spade himself on the 11th of March. My email conversations with Dr. Spade have been going on for a couple of months now, and my stubbornness and his generosity resulted in 7 points of convergence regarding real OBE or OBE implementation. All of the above really. Number 1, and this is the points of convergence. Number 1, real OBE is not about the format of the syllabus. Number 2, or worse, that there should only be one syllabus format for all disciplines. Number 3, that outcomes must not be always industry-driven or creditor-driven, if you know what I'm talking about. Number 4, that outcomes must not be always quantitatively measured. It's not about the numbers, it's about the grades. It's the, as Dr. Spade explained earlier, it's the development of learning. Number 5, that Bloom's taxonomy is helpful but limited and should not become the rule of law in drafting syllabi. It's helpful, but we can also expand it. But the way it is being implemented is, yun na nga, I think you are penalized because you don't follow Bloom's taxonomy. But Dr. Spade himself has pointed out, we can actually expand it. It should be fun, you know. It should be drafting a syllabus should be fun. If that makes sense. Number 6, that OBE, and this is, I think, I feel very strongly about number 6. That OBE as a pedagogical approach is not a tool that must be used by accreditors, assessors, and funding agencies engaging the excellence or quality of an academic program. Unfortunately, that's what CMO 46 series of 2012 cements. In addition also, I raise several other statements, special or issues, especially after if you have read the UP College of Arts and Letters statement against OBE, it's available in Facebook. Just Google it up. I think you'll be able to find it. And here are the other issues I raise. Number 1, there is a grave misconception of what OBE is all about. And this misconception stems from CHED itself. This is cascaded by university or college administrators who are sold to the idea of OBE as government policy in the form of CHED CMO number 46, 2012. But do not have the correct appreciation of real OBE. Even worse, these administrators do not realize the danger of wrong implementation. I'm not sure if this phenomenon is peculiar to the Philippines, but I think the Australian and the South African experience share family resemblances with our experience. The manner, number 2, the manner by which it is being implemented defeats the purpose of student-centered OBE. OBE could never work if implementation focuses solely on specialist gobbledygook. I'm sorry about this. Propagated by teacher education or pedagogical specialists. This has caused tremendous and unnecessary stress among university academics who are forced to adopt the meme of teacher education. The situation would have been different if a ground-up approach was taken. And I'm just being the mouthpiece of the majority. Number 3, I have heard cases, and I already mentioned this, I have heard cases of schools where they have penalized their faculty who have not adopted the OBE format course plan by holding back their salaries. This is the result of spaciously turning a pedagogical approach that is supposed to be empowering into the rule of law. There is something terribly amiss in the implementation that turns something promising into a monster or an enemy. And 4, based from what I've understood so far from my limited reading of Dr. Spade's works and other literature, The spirit of real OBE transcends everything laid down in CHED CMO number 46, 2012. Now, liquid outcomes and overture. This is the last part, so you may now express your sighs of relief. Now, I'm going to do this by basing it on another recent interview with the varsitarian. I hope there are people here from the Institute of Religion, because I was interviewed precisely about my take on the obedization, I don't know if that's a word, obedization of theology courses. And this is, so the question was, how will the adaptation of the model in the new theology curriculum affect the curriculum itself and the professors and the students? So it's theology, but I think it could very speak well also of philosophy. So this is how I responded. If the real question is about the effectivity of the new theology OBE curriculum, it profoundly depends on the readiness of professors, meaning whether they understand the philosophy behind real OBE or not. Hopefully they are not adapting to the new curriculum for compliance sake only. I also hope that they design the courses based on the course's peculiarities and not based on existing OBE syllabus format. Second, like philosophy and other humanities disciplines, the outcomes of theology courses are liquid as opposed to solid. In other words, the Institute of Religion is not teaching principles of engineering to students or accounting methods to accounting students. Rather, the Institute contributes to the honing of the Thomasian identity through the cultivation of Catholic sensibilities among Thomasians regardless of major. This is what I would call character building. Okay? My battery ran out. I can read my paper. This is what I call character building. You can turn on the lights, please. Alright. Okay, let there be light. Alright, so let me read that again. It's the last part anyway. So the Institute contributes to the honing of the Thomasian identity through the cultivation of Catholic sensibilities among Thomasians regardless of major. This is character building, what I would call character building, which cannot be measured by any rubric save life itself. For me, it does not make any sense to ascribe measurable values or grades to character formation. This is an example of a liquid outcome. As there is no single way of being Catholic, ultimately the Institute must contribute to the lifelong learning of students, and the real measure of which is beyond the classroom, beyond the UST campus, which you cannot measure at all because, it's a lifelong, I don't want to call it skill, it's a lifelong liquid outcome. Now, the real measure of being Catholic is when the student already graduates and, deals with the real world out there. Real OB is not the enemy. But the wrong implementation of OBE is the real enemy. Real OB is, however, not a closed system. It is a work in progress. And we have seen through the presentation of Dr. Spady the sort of history of its development. And it still is a work in progress. Real OB should serve the students and not the accreditors. Have you ever felt that when you are drafting your syllabi, you're not writing your syllabi for your students? You're drafting your syllabi for the accreditors? Think there's something wrong. Real OB should serve the students and not the accreditors. It is quite unfortunate that CMO, the CMO was designed as a pretense to OBE, whereas what the CMO called for are rules, regulations, routines, and requirements. I borrowed that from Dr. Spady. Those 4 R's rather from Dr. Spady. Rules, regulations, routines, and requirements. So thank you, Dr. Spady, for the 4 R's. So, in other words, if OB is used as measure for quality assurance, that's the QA, that's the key term in the CMO, by the way, then it becomes pseudo-OBE. Okay, last point. Am I saying that we should give OB a chance? Real OBE a chance? Yes, we give real OBE a chance and not pseudo-OBE. Am I contradicting my position reported in the Varsitarian article? No, actually, if my long email interview was published, then I would have not. Then you will realize I'm not contradicting myself. No, I'm not contradicting myself. If you carefully read the arguments I laid down in the points I presented above or earlier. I am critical of pseudo-OBE's Nazi-like implementation and its blind service to accreditation and corporations. Someone has to say this. Someone has to say these things. Thank you very much. I'll stop there. Unfortunately, I wouldn't, the last slide is a list of must-reads. Okay? But I can just mention them, but I can share with you the slides later on. The first must-read is the CMO from CHED CMO 46-2012. Read the CMO. Okay? It starts off nicely, but then when you get to the middle part, okay, that's where the trouble begins. Read also the Pacocoa letter. You can just Google this up. No, not Pacocoa. Paasco letter to CHED regarding the CMO. Have you read that letter? Paasco actually wrote a letter to CHED asking CHED to reconsider. So Paasco is an accrediting body, right? Paasco wrote to CHED in 2012, I think, right after the release of the, no, I think 2013, right after the release of the CMO, asking CHED to reconsider the CMO and pointed out reasons why. Just Google that up. Okay? Actually, it's in the blog of Father, the president of Paasco. Joel Tapor, Father Joel Tapor. And he's also the president of the University of Davao. Ateneo de Davao. Okay? And then, another must-read is the paper of Father Angilio Aquino talking about the legal infirmities of the CMO. You can Google this up also. But I can share with you the slide later on if you want. Okay? Thank you very much for your patience.